on TV, online, and on your smartphone. This is Ticker News.
This episode of Talk Your Book is proudly brought to you by Honan, providing a complete range of insurance, risk, and financial solutions.
Fundies called me up, told me to take a look, but stay stubborn as bulls and talk their own book. Get the money, get the money, get the money.
Hi, I'm Chris Judd, and this is Talk Your Book. And today we're very lucky to be joined by Emanuel Datt from Datt Capital. Emanuel, thanks very much for coming back on the show. I reckon along with Tom Lambeth, you'll be the most requested person I get to come back on, so I really appreciate you taking the time.
Thanks for having us again, Chris.
Now, Datt Capital's been going really well for a long time. Before we get into your stock pick of choice, maybe you tell us about Datt Capital and the two strategies that you guys implement.
Yeah, sure, Chris. So our flagship fund, the Absolute Return Fund, has been running for about 6.5 years. In that time, we returned about 17% net to our investors on a compounded annualized basis. And about just over a year ago, we opened up a small company strategy, and that's performed at about 30% annualized or thereabouts net to our investors. So very happy with performance, and hopefully can keep it going.
It's a huge start for the smalls. Talk about today. What stock did you want to talk to us about?
Today I wanted to speak about Predictive Discovery, or also known as PDI. That's a ticker on the ASX. And PDI has a gold development project in West Africa, in Guinea itself specifically.
Now, before we get into particulars around PDI, maybe talk through the gold market more broadly. It's had an incredible run with really limited volatility compared to historical standards. And then really over the last couple of months, the volatility's re-entered the gold market. How are you viewing it, and what are you seeing there?
Yeah, sure. So I think, as you say, the gold market's had an incredible run. And we've seen a great uplift in gold equities. And, I think that a lot of what has driven the gold market has been sort of the uncertainty around the US election. However, now that's sorted, we're actually still seeing quite a lot of liquidity and appetite for, risk-on assets, if you would. Gold, even though it's sort of traditionally viewed as a hedge against uncertainty, there's also other factors, right? Like currency depreciation and as a hedge for further monetary stimulus. So I think that there's a lot of factors that are still quite favourable for gold's potential.
And you mentioned PDI's deposit, the Bankan project located in Guinea.
Yeah.
I feel like a lot of investors in Australia, when they look at West Africa for gold plays, just view all of West Africa in the one bucket.
Yeah.
When West Africa is filled with lots of different countries that are completely different jurisdictions to operate in.
Yeah.
A, do you think that statement's fair? And B, where does Guinea rank compared to some of the other jurisdictions?
Yeah, sure. So I think that, as you point out, Africa is an enormously diverse place, even West Africa itself, wide array and plethora of different ethnicities, languages, religions, and governments, most importantly. I think that the region as a whole, it's definitely not a tier 1 mining jurisdiction. However, there are many countries within this region, and I'd probably say that Guinea is probably one of the better jurisdictions by far. Primarily due to it's fairly stable, I would say, in the relative sense, and we've also seen the influx of majors like Rio Tinto and very significant Chinese and Russian sort of companies operating quite successfully for many years in this jurisdiction itself.
And when's the DFS due for Balkan?
So I believe the company targeting a DFS to be delivered around mid-calendar year 25. So I think that there's, it should be quite interesting because we know that the company have been sort of pursuing resource growth, cost optimization, and of course permitting is obviously a very, significant catalyst for the company itself. The exploitation permit, which is basically which provides a lot of certainty for the project delivery going forward. I believe the company has claimed that's been imminent for a couple of months now. And so fingers crossed we see that very soon.
And in terms of the quality of the resource, maybe talk us through a little bit about its size and the grades, and obviously there's a high grade zone as well, how material that could be.
Yeah, sure. So broadly, the resource is just over 5 million ounces. It's sort of probably lower grade at the shallower depths, which is the open pit portion, but then there's a higher grade element that in the mine plan, contemplates going underground at a certain stage. I think ultimately, grade is king, but economics is God. That's what I like to say, because operational.
Is that a Dattism? I haven't heard that before.
Yeah, in a way. But because I guess ultimately the cost structure can vary quite significantly depending on what where the project's located, essentially.
And they put some numbers around CapEx already, which look to be pretty reasonable if they get confirmed through the DFS.
Yeah.
What are they, and what are your expectations for initial CapEx?
Yeah, that's right. I think the initial CapEx, off the top of my head, is just over 500 million US, or it could be slightly under, come to think of it. However, a DFS will really sort of reduce the margin or the range of CapEx outcomes as part of the process. I think that there's probably, I think the right way to look at it is we often use a ratio, NPV over CapEx, and that gives you a pretty good idea around the actual quality of the project. Working off the
what sort of ratio looks attractive when you do that?
Yeah, sure. So just working off the PFS numbers and the current market cap. So current market cap is around 370 million in US dollars, and the NPV at 2,300 gold is around 1.4 billion US. So around 4 times, which is actually really good.
Yeah.
After you see projects that only have an NPV to CapEx ratio of 2 or 2.5.
Yeah.
Go ahead. So
anything north of 3.5 generally is something you'll take a closer look at. Is that reasonable?
Yeah, absolutely. And it definitely sort of demonstrates that, there could be significant room to grow in terms of market cap, and it looks undervalued.
And you mentioned the exploitation permit they're waiting on. I think about 6 months ago, there was a hope October this year that would be finalised. Obviously not finalised yet. Is that the big re-rate? Is it a big chance to get a re-rate post that, do you think? And there's also Perseus sitting on the register who's up to about 20%, or just under 20% in their shareholding.
Yeah.
Do you think that's a catalyst they'd be waiting for before potentially looking at a full takeover bid?
Yeah, absolutely. The process to get an exploitation permit is reasonably long. In the sense it's generally a body of work that takes 2 to 3 years to prepare properly. And, the new management team, or newish, I should say now, have been in place for about 2.5 years, and they've sort of definitely, have the pedigree to operate within this jurisdiction and are proven operators. And I think that given we're sort of coming to the pointy end of things. That's what I'm trying to say in a roundabout way. There's obviously lots of community consultation, environmental studies, and all these various aspects of the project are looked at prior to the exploitation permit being granted. But once that's in place, it provides a very high degree of certainty that the project will go ahead, assuming that it can be financed and the economics stack up, etc. So that's why I consider it a key de-risking catalyst.
And we're, full disclosure, we're Perseus shareholders, and we think Jeff Quartermaine, their CEO, is a superstar. How are you viewing that? He's sort of renowned for not overpaying for things and a pretty hard investment banking background.
Yeah.
How do you think that will play out? And could you see a world where there's perhaps another group involved, and who might that group be?
Yeah, sure. Well, Perseus, great operators, clear West African pedigree, multi-mine, very experienced, as you point out. And interestingly enough, have 20% of PDI's register. I think that the most interesting thing about that is in Perseus's presentations, etc., we're seeing Bankan highlighted on the development pipeline. I think that demonstrates the intention is clear. As you say, I think that there could be competitive tension for this asset, given what we've seen in the past with attractive West African assets in the right sort of location and jurisdiction. I think that potential competitors for this asset could be Chinese and Russian companies, Zijin, Nordgold, just to pick a couple of big ones off the top of my head, would be very much interested in a project like this. Where it ends up is still, I guess a point of speculation at this point. But I really do see that exploitation permit being a really significant value catalyst and perhaps the firing gun. We never know.
And probably inappropriate to ask, given there's a potential takeover offer, but let's say what price do you think would get groups interested? What is it, it's trading mid-20s today?
Yeah.
Is it a sort of 35 cents, 40 cents? Do you think that's what a majority of investors would be hoping for in a transaction?
Yeah, I would probably say that our personal expectations are that we see this over 30 cents.
Yeah.
Depending on the competitive tension, 40 cents wouldn't be too big a stretch either. But yeah, I guess it's hard to say without. You
don't know what the gold price is going to do, and there's a lot of moving parts.
That's right. And I mean, if gold price continues on its merry way, trending up, then it could go even higher. So let's see.
So you've got potential re-rates, you've got permitting, you've got DFS due, and you've got potential bidding war. They're the three hopes for price appreciation.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think one thing that is quite interesting is that we've seen Samandu, which is a huge iron ore project. One of the largest mining construction projects has been undertaken in the last 5 years. That's actually coming to the tail end of its delivery cycle, I believe, at the end of 2025. However, that's something that PDI could benefit from in the construction of the project, in the sense of...
In terms of staff availability.
Yeah, availability, equipment, and, not competing against, very, very huge, globally significant projects in country itself. So, so I think that could bode well for controlling capex and ultimately leading to a very speedy and successful project pushing into production potentially.
Very well thought out as always. Thanks very much for coming back on the show.
No worries, Chris. Thanks for having us.
And thanks for tuning in to watch Talk Your Book. We'll do it all again same time next week.
You're watching Ticker. We'll have more in just a few minutes.